Hello and welcome to our election special India Votes 2019. I'm Frank Rausan Pereira, and today we will be looking at the state of Punjab, specifically at the 6 seats of Khadur Sahib, Jalandhar, Hoshiarpur, Ludhiana, Fatehgarh Sahib and Faridkot. So let's begin our special Rajyanama.
डेवलपमेंट अपने पंजाब विच होई है उदा बहुत बड़ा सेरा मोदी साहब नु जांदा है। पंजाब का किसान आत्महत्या के लिए मजबूर हो, इससे बड़ी दर्दनाक कोई बात नहीं हो सकती।
न्याय योजना गरीबी पर सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक है।
मैं 2 साल में 8 लाख के पंजाबी ने नौकरियां सारी अपने तक समझ। इन नेताओं ने इस देश को लूट लिया। वाहिगुरु जी दा खालसा, वाहिगुरु जी दी। ਅਸੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਆਂ ਅਗਲੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਰੰਗ ਫਿੱਟੇ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ।
Well, let's now take a closer look at these 6 seats. Let's start
% votes. And 5 years prior to that, in the 2009 elections, the seat went to Mohinder Singh KP. His vote share then was 45.36%. In the year 2004, the seat was won by Rana Gurjeet Singh, once again of the Congress party, and 46.46% votes were polled in favour of the Congress candidate. In the year 1999, Jalandhar was won by Balbir Singh, again of the Congress, and his vote share was 47.47%. A year ago, in 1998, Inder Kumar Gujral won the seat for Janata Dal, and his vote share was a little less than 60% then. In the year 1996, the seat was won by Darbara Singh of the Akali Dal, who won with 45% votes nearly. And in the 1991 elections, Congress's Yash registered a victory here, securing nearly 56% of the total votes polled. Once again, in 1989, I.K. Gujral won the seat for the Janata Dal for the first time with 48% votes. In the year 1985, the seat was won by Rajinder Singh of the Congress, and he secured 50.77% votes then. In the 1980 as well, the seat had been won by Congress's Rajinder Singh, and his vote share was nearly the same 5 years ago as well at 50.39%. In the year 1977, Jalandhar went to Iqbal Singh Dhillon of the Shiromani Akali Dal. He won massively with 62.13% votes cast in his favour. In 1971, Sheoran Singh won the seat for the Congress party with a vote share of 53.62%. In 1967 as well, Sheoran Singh had won the seat with 39% votes. 5 years back also, in 1962, the people of Jalandhar had elected Sheoran Singh as their representative in Parliament. And in these elections, he had secured 51.53% of the votes. Sheoran Singh was elected MP from Jalandhar 4 times in a row from 1957 to 1971. Now this time, sitting Congress MP Santokh Singh Choudhary is contesting against Charan Singh Atwal of Shiromani Akali Dal and retired Justice Zora Singh of the Aam Aadmi Party. The BSP has also fielded its candidate from Jalandhar. Frank.
Right, Tina Jha, thank you for taking us through those figures there from our data center. We'll come back to you, of course, for the other seats as well. Let me introduce my panelists on the program right now. Ashok Tandon, senior journalist with me here in the studio. Also with me is Professor Sunil K. Choudhary, political analyst. Welcome to the both of you. And I'd also like to welcome IP Singh of the Times of India, who joins us from Jalandhar at this point in time. IP Singh, let me begin with you first, of course, and try and understand really, the bastion of the Congress is what Jalandhar is, but what are the issues this time around on the ground there in Jalandhar?
Issues are not different in Jalandhar, they are the same. Modi is a factor and the performance of Punjab government is a factor on the other side. Issues are largely national, but of course Congress MP is an incumbent, so that remains an issue sometimes at some places. Okay. But here the most crucial factor in Jalandhar would be in this election, I think, performance of BSP. BSP is on the resurgent mode after forging an alliance with the PDA. So this will be a new factor this time because they are in the alliance, so they are likely to gain. One thing can be sure about them, that they will recover their vote bank which they lost to others in the previous elections, especially after 2009. So in that way, I mean, it's a big challenge for Congress as well as for Akalis, because Akalis also got some share of their votes in the past elections, especially in 2012, then in 2017 also. Of course, BSP lost to AAP a share of votes in 2014 also. But now BSP is likely to gain, and that is really confusing the equations here in Jalandhar.
Okay.
Otherwise, it was a safe seat for Congress, but now it appears to be in a good fight. I mean, Akali Dal is able to give it a good fight, and at the same time, BSP is making the situation much complicated.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Tandon, I'd like to bring you into the picture now. A three-way contest. Whom is it likely to favor?
See, as your colleague was saying, Kashi Ram, the founder of BSP, was from Punjab, and he had a very strong hold in neighbouring Hoshiarpur, from where he also used to contest. And if we recall, DS4, Dalit Shoshit 4, 4 caste, that was the name of the BSP when initially Kashi Ram launched the party in Punjab. And many people may not know that the Dalit vote percentage in total Punjab is perhaps next to Tamil Nadu. It is 30+% yes. in Punjab. So BSP has been playing a role in Punjab, but for some time it lost its ground, and therefore it was completely wiped out. Similarly, in good old days, CPI used to have some pockets of influence in Punjab, but gradually it turned out to be between Congress on one hand and the Akali BJP alliance on the other hand. But coming back to Jalandhar, Jalandhar has been traditionally Congress stronghold. 4 times Sheoran Singh retained that seat, and the rural vote bank, vote share in Jalandhar constituency is totally, in fact, if I may say so, has been backing a Congress candidate, which is rather unusual in Punjab, because most of the rural belt in Punjab was used to be with Akali Dal, and Jalandhar city itself is very prosperous. Maximum number of NRIs from Jalandhar, and people are rich, but they support Congress traditionally. So it's a very unusual thing that both Sikhs and non-Sikhs in Jalandhar have been backing Congress. And now with Captain Amarinder in command, he is in fact neutralizing the narrative of nationalism in Punjab, the only state where the local chief minister is in fact challenging Narendra Modi. And in Punjab, if we can call it, it's a fight between Narendra Modi and Captain Amarinder Singh. Incidentally, Akali Dal is also not interested in making it a Captain Amarinder versus Badals, whereas Amarinder is not interested in making it, he wants to make it Congress versus the Badal, because the whatever disadvantage the Akali Dal had when they were in power, he is still exploiting that. People have not forgotten the Akali BJP rule in Punjab. So state issues still dominate the narrative in Punjab, although as I said, Akalis and BJP both of course, but Akalis particularly are keen on projecting Narendra Modi and the nationalism narrative, Balakot, etc., so that whatever the deficiencies they have, they don't want that to be a part of the election campaign. Right. But coming back to this particular seat, I think the presence of BSP may not be able to cut much ice. That is my feeling. And but still, as a triangular contest it is, let us hope what happens. But surely Congress is on a sound footing overall in Punjab, particularly in Jalandhar, because what appears to be from here is that Akalis are concentrating only on couple of seats where they are strong. For instance, the Simrat Kaur Badal seat in Bathinda and Sukhbir's own seat in Firozpur. They are concentrating more on that. And whereas Captain Amarinder Singh is in fact contesting practically all the seats in Punjab. So therefore, it's a very peculiar situation. But I think considering all these factors, Congress appears to have a better position in Jalandhar at least.
Are we looking at, Professor, at a weakened Akali Dal at this point in time in Punjab?
Yeah, basically, if you see the assembly elections 2017, the Akali's positions has basically receded to the lower grounds, and I think 2019 should be seen from a different perspective altogether, because I won't say that Modi wave has dissipated to a large extent, but still the developmental works which have been undertaken by Narendra Modi ji and his government at the center have got its reflections in different parts of Punjab as well. Secondly, when we say that the Jalandhar seat is basically the urban seat, and we could have basically, it's unclear to us that how could this seat could have been bargained by BJP, keeping in view the lowering position of Shiromani Akali Dal. This seat could have been given big fight by BJP vis-a-vis Congress rather than by SAD vis-a-vis the Congress. Would say that because this time the Aam Aadmi Party is on a very back footing. BSP may be taking some inroads into the Congress votes. So this could have been a very great fight between Congress and Shiromani Akali Dal. Had this seat been given to BJP as a part of bargain, so I think BJP and SAD could have been in a better position to make a good comeback back in this seat, which could have been a stronghold for the Congress.
Right. Right. All right. Let's go across to our correspondent now, Ravindra Singh Sheoran, who's joining us from the ground in Punjab. Ravindra, you've been travelling across the length and breadth of Punjab. Give us what you're picking up from the ground there.
Yeah, good evening, Frank. That's right. In what is happening in Punjab, I have been travelling from Jammu to Punjab, Uttarakhand, and many other states also. But what our esteemed panelist has said, I just would like to take it a bit further. That what I have noticed is that the issue which has been raised by the national leaders of different political parties, especially the BJP, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Amit Shah, and other union ministers, they have been raising the issue of nationalism. That issue, the panelist is saying rightly, that you will not find here, at least on the ground in Punjab. The Punjab politics and the election campaigning completely has been dominated here or by the local issues. And the Congress party is trying to make it a bipolar fight between the captain versus the Badals. In the last 2014 elections, we have seen that a significant number of vote chunk and 4 seats have been won by the Aam Aadmi Party. But this time, Aam Aadmi Party is contesting, though they have been contesting all the seats, but only on the one seat, that is Sangrur, the sitting member of parliament, Bhagwant Mann, he is the only candidate. The Aam Aadmi Party is banking upon that he can win. Rest of the seats, they are not very sure that they will be able to manage a sizable number of votes. So the Badal versus fight is beneficial. Badal versus Captain Amrinder Singh fight is quite beneficial for the incumbent state government of the Congress party here. The Akali Dal and the BJP, they have been raising various issues of the local government, that the government which came here on some of the promises which they made at the time during the electioneering of the assembly elections, that they will bring prosperity to the state, and the lost glory the state has lost at the time when, in the 10 years of Akali rule, the drug peddling was one of the issue, that a lot of drugs is available, and the young generation has completely been rotten by the drugs in the Punjab belt. But now Akali Dal and the BJP, they have been saying that the Congress party and some of the leaders of the Congress party, they are in fact they are managing the affair of the drugs in this area, and they have not tried to stop the drug menace in this Punjab. Also, the farmers, a lot of the cotton belt of this country is known as the Malwa belt, that is Bhatinda, Firozpur, and that belt. Now the farmers are in very bad shape. Farmers are committing suicides, and the Shiromani Akali Dal, in fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also attacked yesterday while addressing a rally in Bhatinda, while he was addressing a rally in favor of Harsimrat Kaur Badal, that the present government has failed to protect the interest of the farmers and the agriculture. Punjab being an agriculture state, agrarian economy, the farmers of Punjab are in quite bad shape, and they really need some remedy of their problems. Besides this, the people
Ravindra Singh,
in
Sheoran,
the,
I'm going
as
to
the
come back
panelists-
to you during the course of the program, of course, to get some more updates from the ground in Punjab. But before that, let's go across to our data center and take a look at the second of 6 seats, which is Khadur Sahib. My colleague Tina Jha with the details.
Well, Frank, see, this would only be the third general election in the Khadur Sahib constituency because it came into existence after delimitation of parliamentary and assembly constituencies in the year 2008. So since its formation, it has virtually been an Akali citadel. The constituency was earlier known as Taran but changed to Khadur Sahib, a historic village where second Sikh Guru Angad Dev lived for 13 years. Now, the last election held here was in 2014 and it was won by Shiromani Akali Dal's Ranjit Singh Brahmpura, and he had grabbed a vote share of nearly 45% votes. And 5 years prior to that, in 2009, in the first election after delimitation, the constituency sent again Shiromani Akali Dal's Ratan Singh Ajnala to parliament. Now, this time the election is quite interesting because both Ajnala and Brahmapura have parted ways with the SAD and formed a breakaway faction, the SAD Taksali. So this time the Shiromani Akali Dal has fielded former president of the SGPC, Bibi Jagir Kaur, to contest from Khadur Sahib seat. And she is up against Congress's Jasbir Singh Gill as well as Manjinder Singh Sidhu of the Aam Aadmi Party, Frank.
Right, Tina, thank you for taking us through the details of this particular constituency, Khadur Sahib. I'm going to go across to IP Singh now, who's joining us from Jalandhar on the program. IP Singh, you know, as far as Khadur Sahib is concerned, your thoughts on this particular seat?
Test is definitely triangular, but AAP is not a factor there. It's triangular, it's Paramjit Kaur Khalda who is making it triangular. She has been fielded by Punjabi Ekta Party, head by Sukhpal Singh Khera, and SAD Taksali, as earlier pointed out, Ranjit Singh Brahmpura, etc. They are supporting Paramjit Kaur Khalda's candidature, and it is Khalda who is making it triangular. Paramjit Kaur Khalda is wife of Jaswant Singh Khalda, who was a human rights activist and was General Secretary of Human Rights Wing of Shiromani Akali Dal. He had gathered data from 3 cremation grounds of Amritsar about the disappeared Sikh men and women in those areas. Gathered the data of around 2,000 such people who were cremated by police, saying that they were not identified. But later it turned out that they could be identified or their identity was known. So as he was picked up by the police, Punjab police, eliminated, and later on around half dozen police officers, they were convicted and sentenced for his murder, elimination. Now, her presence in the field has pushed the issue of human rights also in the center stage. That is different with Khadur Sahib seat. This issue remains peculiar there, very peculiar there. Jagir Kaur, Bibi Jagir Kaur, SAD's candidate, is not a local candidate. She is from Doaba region. Her own assembly segment, Pulat, is part of Hoshiarpur parliamentary constituency. Jasbir Singh Gill of Congress is, of course, a local candidate there. So it's a triangular contest that way.
Sure. So is the going to be tough as far as the Shiromani Akali Dal is concerned in this particular seat?
Akali, in fact, Khadur Sahib was the only seat in 2014 where Akali Dal gained more votes than the margin of votes was more than the votes taken by AAP, only seat. Otherwise, all the other 3 seats taken by SAD, won by SAD, margin was much less than what the AAP got there. So in that way, it's a typical Akali bastion, very stronghold. But this time around, they are really up for a very, very huge challenge.
Okay, all right. The SAD is up for a huge challenge is what the expert from the ground is suggesting right now. IP Singh, thank you so much for joining us on the program and sharing your views on both those seats. Of course, Jalandhar as well as Khadur Sahib. You know, Mr. Tandon, the breakaway factions or dissidents, how much of a role do they play in a national election like this? And can they be spoilers really for some of the bigger parties?
Certainly, because in the last 2014 election, the emergence of Aam Aadmi Party in Punjab was a very important factor. No, even that Aam Aadmi Party has split. And on the other hand, the Shiromani Akali Dal has also split, particularly in this part of the state. So therefore, these two factions will certainly have some impact on the outcome of the election. But as your expert was saying, this has been a bastion of the Akali Dal, and particularly senior Prakash Singh Badal runs large in this area, and he is still an icon, particularly in the rural belt of and that part of Punjab. So therefore, I will not be surprised if the Akalis manage to retain this seat, but they are not focusing too much on that, because they know, because of the obvious factors, it is a pro-Akali seat. But their real worry is the contest in Batinda and Firozpur. These are the two prestigious seats for the family, and therefore their all guns are deployed there. But this particular seat, I think, as you said, the spoilers may not have much say in that. At the end of the day, it's a two-way split. So eventually, I don't think even Congress is also not banking very heavily on this particular seat.
Sure. All right, we'll slip into a short break now. On the other side, we'll take a look at the other 4 seats that we are concentrating on in Punjab as well. We'll also talk about the downfall of the Aam Aadmi Party in Punjab and why the party isn't doing as well as it did in the previous election. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Delhi for centuries has nurtured many kingdoms and rulers. These kingdoms have left us several significant monuments with an incredible history to tell. Among these monuments is one which is in the midst of posh bungalows in Hauz Khas area, the Chor Minar. Built under the rule of Alauddin Khilji, telling a statement of his rule, is believed to have stood out as a deterrent for thieves and thugs who attempted to venture in his kingdom. Built in 13th century, the pillar is made of rubble masonry and stands at the center of a platform. Each of the 4 sides of the platform has 3 arched recesses with a doorway on one side leading to a spiral staircase. The pillar, also believed to be known as the Tower of Thieves, was used to display the severed heads of the thieves and thugs through its 225 holes.
Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha TV. This is Rajyanama. I'm Frank Rausan Pereira. We're taking an in-depth look at 6 seats in Punjab that will go to polls in the last and final phase, that is the 7th phase of voting on the 19th of May. Results, of course, for all the seats will be out on the 23rd of May. Let's now go across straight to Tina Jha, who's standing by in our data center to talk about the seat of Ludhiana. Over to you, Tina.
Well, see, Frank, just like the parliamentary seat of Jalandhar, Ludhiana has also traditionally been a Congress stronghold. Of the 14 general elections that it has seen since 1962, the Grand Old Party has won 7 times, followed by the Shiromani Akali Dal that has won the seat 5 times. So mostly it is a direct contest between the Congress and the Akali Dal in Ludhiana. Although in the previous elections, that is in 2014 Lok Sabha polls, Ludhiana witnessed a 4-cornered contest, at the end of which Ravindra Singh Bindu of the Congress party won with 27.30% votes, and he defeated Aam Aadmi Party's H.S. Fulka, Akali Dal's Manpreet Singh Ayali and independent candidate Simarjit Singh Bains in the previous elections. 5 years ago, in the 2009 elections as well, Ludhiana was won by the Congress party when party spokesperson Manish Tiwari registered a victory here with 53% votes. Prior to that, in 2004, Charanjit Singh Dhillon of the Shiromani Akali Dal won the Ludhiana seat with a vote share of 37.85%. Back in 1999, the seat went again to Congress's Gurcharan Singh Galib, and his vote share stood at 52% back then in Ludhiana. In 1998, Amrik Singh Aliwal of the Shiromani Akali Dal got 49.71% votes and claimed victory in Ludhiana. 2 years ago, in 1996 as well, Amrik Singh Aliwal had won the seat for the Akali Dal, and his vote share then was 45.60%. In the 1991 elections, Gurcharan Singh Galib had won the seat for the Congress with more than 56% of the votes being polled in his favour. And 2 years prior to that, in 1989, the seat was won by Rajinder Kaur Bulara of the Shiromani Akali Dal Man. She defeated Gurcharan Singh Galib of the Congress by a margin of more than 1,30,000 votes, and her vote share stood at 53.48%. In the 1985 elections, Ludhiana was won by Meva Singh of the Akali Dal, and in these polls, 48.23% of the votes were cast in favour of the Shiromani Akali Dal. Prior to that, in 1980, the seat was won by Devinder Singh Garcha of the Congress I with 54.45% votes, while in 1977, Jagdev Singh Talwandi of the Akali Dal got nearly 60% votes, wresting the seat from the Congress party. In 1971, Devinder Singh Garcha, again of the Congress, had won the seat with 54.76% votes. In the 1967 elections, Devinder Singh won the seat for the Congress, this time with 36.60% votes. Now, his win came at a time when the Congress party's popularity had declined considerably following the death of Jawaharlal Nehru as well as Lal Bahadur Shastri. So, due to discontent among senior Congress leaders, a number of opposition parties had come to the fore. But despite that, the Congress party had won for the fourth time, albeit with less number of seats countrywide. And Ludhiana was one of the seats that the party had managed to win in 1967. Surprisingly, in the 1962 elections, when the Congress party won 361 seats and won for the third time, Ludhiana voted for Swatantra Party candidate Kapoor Singh. He had got 34.64% votes, although prior to him, the seat was won by the Congress on all three occasions when elections were held since 1952. And now this time, the Shiromani Akali Dal has fielded MS Griwal against sitting Congress MP Ravneet Singh Bittu. The presence of Lok Insaf Party candidate Simarjit Singh Bains, who had contested as an independent in 2014. So this time he's in the fray, and this makes it a triangular contest here as well. Frank.
Right, Tina, thank you for taking us through those figures there of Ludhiana constituency. Let's go across to Naresh now, who's joining us from Ludhiana at this point in time. Naresh Arora, editor, punjabkesari.in, joining us from Jalandhar, I beg your pardon. Naresh, as far as the seat of Ludhiana is concerned, traditionally a Congress bastion. The Congress also won in 2014. The sitting MP, of course, is a Congress MP from that particular seat. What's going to be different, if anything, this time around?
If we compare the 2014 results as we've seen on the screen, it was a close fight between the Aam Aadmi Party's Harvinder Singh Phulka and Ravindra Singh Bittu. And the victory margin was less than 2%, around 20,000 vote, I guess. So this time, the Congress has fielded again, Bittu again, but the Akali Dal candidate seems to be a bit weak, and the third candidate who secured around 2 lakhs vote in 2014, Mr. Simarjit Singh Bains, he is also one of the potential candidates in the fray who can, disturb the results and who can manage the victory as well. But the results, again, the major fight, I would say, there will be between the Congress and the BJP only. Because the area of the Simarjit Singh Bains is limited to the Atamnagar and the Ludhiana South constituencies, MLA constituencies, where they both brothers are used to win from last many elections. And if they go out of the Ludhiana, they will not get so much of the votes to secure the victory. So I guess the Ludhiana seat, there will be a close contest between the Akali candidate Maheshwar Singh Garewal and the sitting MP Ravindra Singh Bittu. Since the and Ludhiana is the industrial town, so people are betting on the implementation of the GST. The industry is happy with the policies of the government, and since there are Hindu seats also in the Ludhiana, 4 seats are being contested by the BJP in assembly election. So there can be a Hindu swing also in favor of the Maheshwar Singh Garewal. So okay. I guess it will be a close contest between the Akali Dal and the Congress. They both are the traditional rivals. Yes, bans can disturb the both candidates, but it depends how much votes he get. And the other question raised is the share of the Aam Aadmi Party votes. They secured 2.80 lakh votes in last election. Where this vote will swing this time, because it was a huge vote. The Fulka managed to get in the wave of the Aam Aadmi Party in 2014. This 2.80 lakh vote will decide who will win the Ludhiana.
Okay, all right. Let me, Professor, let me bring you into the picture now. You know, Ludhiana, of course, a prestigious seat. It's an old seat. It is a seat that the Congress has won several times. But, you know, last time around, we saw an interesting contest with the Aam Aadmi Party being in the fray. This time around, you know, there does not seem to be an Aam Aadmi Party wave, at least in Punjab. So, how do you see this seat going?
No, if you see that Aam Aadmi Party's entry into the contest in 2014 and Mr. Fulka's gaining good grounds over there, but now AAP is not there in the picture since there has been the crisis in leadership within Punjab. Secondly, I would say that there could be split of the AAP votes between Congress and Shiromani Akali Dal. But keeping in with the recent statements which have come from Sam Petroda, I think that may hurt the sentiments of Sikhs, and that would bring about some sort of change, shifting of votes of the Sikhs to the Shiromani Akali Dal. Thirdly, I would say that this developmental works of Modi government would bring about some positive change, because you see that issues like GST and others are the issues which have been taken up by the central government. So developmental work being important plank of the ruling alliance between SAD and BJP will bring about some change in the elections. And finally, I would say that Jalandhar is a seat where you have got industrial hub, you have Ludhiana, you have urban voters and the businessman. So they all are having different perception vis-a-vis the traditional vote banks which used to be siding with the Congress. So this, because last percentage which Bittuji won the seats, it was a 25% or so. So keeping with that very small margin, it seems that this seat could be managed by Shiromani Akali Dal.
Right. Let me go across now to Ravindra Singh Sheoran for a reaction as well, our correspondent joining us from Punjab at this point in time. You know, Ravindra, as far as Punjab is concerned, if you look at the urban areas and the rural areas, are the issues different? Are there any, issues that are binding both and encompassing both the rural areas and the urban areas?
Yeah, that's right, Frank. There is a lot of difference between the issues of the rural and the urban areas. The rural areas, the farmers, basically, as I told you, the farmers, this is an agrarian economy. Punjab is the wheat basket of the country. And Punjab's farmers now actually have been facing a lot of problems for at least 2 or 3 decades. They have been in distress, and different political parties which they have ruled the state, they could not address the issues of farmers. We have seen a lot of farmer suicide in the present dispensation and in the past governments as well. But though the Farmer Commission has also been established by the present Captain Amarinder Singh government, but so far there is no delivery visible on the ground by the Farmers Commission or by the government at large. Also, the issues of unemployment. The time when Badal government went and the Captain Amarinder Singh government came in, they have promised that they will provide a huge amount of employment to the young generation, and also the eligible candidates will be chosen for the government services as well. But now, after more than 2 years have been passed, the unemployed youth, they are still roaming on the roads, and they are quite frustrated, and they have been complaining that this government basically so far has not been able to deliver And you know, Frank, the Punjab has a history of corruption in the government services. We still remember the time when Badal government was there. At that time, there was a corruption case in the Punjab Public Service Commission, and at that time, because of that corruption issue, the Badal government has to go. So, corruption in the government services is still an issue, and people in the village, they are still eyeing on this. In the urban areas, the GST was the issue, because GST was one of the issue which has adversely affect the fortunes of the Shiromani Akali Dal and the BJP at the time of assembly elections. Because
so issues are different really as far as the rural areas are concerned and the urban areas are concerned, is what you're suggesting. DST is a big issue in the urban areas, whereas the agrarian crisis and the farmer crisis is an issue in the rural areas. Ravindra Singh Sheoran, thank you for joining us on the program and sharing your views and your thoughts really on what's the scenario in Punjab. Let's now go across to our data center once again and take a look at the fourth of 6 seats that we are looking at today from Punjab, which is Fatehgarh Sahib, another new seat, of course, going to the polls only for the third time, this time around on the 19th of May. Tina Jha, over to you.
See, Frank, Fatehgarh Sahib is a reserved seat and it has 9 assembly segments. So the constituency came into existence following delimitation in 2008, and as you pointed out, this would only be the third general election that this constituency will face. Till date, that of 2009 and 2014, only 2 general elections taken place in this seat, and this one will be the third one. In the 2014 Lok Sabha election, Virender Singh Khalsa of the Aam Aadmi Party won by a margin of over 54,000 votes, with a vote share of 35.63%. He had defeated Sadhu Singh of the Congress Party. 5 years prior to that, in 2009, the seat was won by Congress's Sukhdev Singh, who had got 46.96% votes. Now, this time, the contest is quite interesting in Fatehgarh Sahib, because in the fray are 2 former bureaucrats and friends, but now political rivals. So while Congress has fielded Amar Singh, who was the principal secretary to former Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister Digvijay Singh, Shiromani Akali Dal's nominee is Darbara Singh Guru, who served as the principal secretary to former Punjab Chief Minister Prakash Singh Badal. While the Aam Aadmi Party has fielded Bandeep Singh as its leader, Virender Singh Khalsa, who had won in 2014, has now quit the party and joined the BJP. Frank.
Right, Tina Jha, thank you for taking us through those numbers there as far as that particular seat is concerned. Let me go across now to our expert from the ground. Naresh is still with us. You know, Naresh, take us through the seat of Fatehgarh Sahib.
See, last winner of this seat, Aam Aadmi Party, is totally out of contest this time, because the Bandeep Singh Dulo is the lateral entry on the seat. He was not decided till the last moment, and when Aam Aadmi Party couldn't get a candidate, they make the entry of the Dulo. He's son of Shamsher Singh Dulo, former president of the Punjab Congress and a former Rajya Sabha member also. So he's still a Rajya Sabha member too. So the Aam Aadmi Party, perspective of the Aam Aadmi Party becomes weak because of the lateral entry and the weak candidate. As far as 2 other candidates are concerned, the Amar Singh is fighting the first election, and Darbara Singh Guru has lost 2 elections already. He contested in 2012 and 2017 in the Vidhan Sabha election, in the assembly election, but unfortunately he lost the election, and Akali Dal bet on the Darbara Singh Guru once again. This seat has the impact of this scrimmage issue, because in the Malwa region of the Punjab, it was a huge issue of scrimmage in the assembly election also, 2017 assembly election also. That's why the Congress win the big number of the seats in the Malwa region and come into the power. Though it was held, the scrimmage issue took place in the Bargadi, but the entire area of the Malwa was affected by the same. And the Congress is again planning a huge rally in the Bargadi to counter the 1984 issue that is being raised by the Prime Minister also and the Shiromani Akali Dal also. So it will see the impact of the scrimmage again, I guess, because people are not very happy with the action of the Akali Dal. But on the other hand, this is the same area where people are asking the question to the all candidates. Means people are asking them for the water facility, to the road facilities, to the employment, the agriculture issues there in the Malwa. They were raising the issue of the crop is being not lifted from the fields, and the
Right.
misrule of the 2 years of the Congress government as well. So
Sure.
I think it will be a contest between the Akali Dal and the Congress only on the ground, and Aam Aadmi Party is not in the fray this time.
Okay.
Though they won the seat from in last election for around 50,000 votes, I guess. But this time they are not in the contest, and there will be a direct fight between the Akali Dal and the Congress.
Okay, okay. Mr. Tandon, you know, one thing has been consistent over the last 40 minutes or so that we've been discussing, even if you look at this particular seat of Fatehgarh Sahib, the downfall of the Aam Aadmi Party in the state of Punjab. What is the reason, do you think? What is it that you would attribute to the sudden slide of the Aam Aadmi Party in the state?
Two things. One is that, as I said earlier, the anti-incumbency of the Akali rule was one of the factors for the emergence of Aam Aadmi Party in Punjab. Similarly, the anti-incumbency of the Sheila Dikshit government in Delhi was instrumental in the surge of the Aam Aadmi Party. But after the elections, both 2014 election and after the assembly, there has been a split in Aam Aadmi Party, because the Punjab faction of Aam Aadmi felt that they cannot be dictated by Arvind Kejriwal sitting in Delhi. Well, he may be the Chief Minister of Delhi, but he is not that kind of a figure who can control the Punjab faction, because Punjab faction of Akali Dal had come up on its own, and their leadership was also a local leadership. When Arvind Kejriwal tried to impose his leadership on the Punjab Aam Aadmi Party leaders, there was a revolt against Arvind Kejriwal, and that is why the Aam Aadmi Party has split. So after the split, many people of the Aam Aadmi Party in Punjab have been talking in different tones. Some people are joining BJP and all that. So therefore people have, you know, as a basically you can say that honeymoon of the Aam Aadmi Party in Punjab is over, and therefore the present position. But coming back to the issues, you must have noticed all along all these assembly and Lok Sabha seats in Punjab, local issues are dominating. Farmer suicide, loan waiver has not been implemented in Punjab. That is also one issue against the Congress party. You must have seen, even Prime Minister in his rallies in Punjab has not been talking about national issues. He is also addressing the local issues of farmer suicide, loan waiver, farmer distress, all these things. So therefore, Punjab perhaps is one state, although it is in the mainstream, a border state, where local issues are dominating, and on that Aam Aadmi Party has not been able to take any position. They can't criticize the Akali government now because the Congress party is in power, and they have nothing to attack Virender Singh on the local issues, and they can't even pitch for the national issues also. So therefore they are not in the fray. But I am afraid that in most of the Punjab Lok Sabha seats, you will see that issues which are local are going to be paramount, and contest is largely between BJP and SAD and Congress on the other hand.
Right. All right. Let's now take a look at the 5th and 6th seats that you're focusing on in Punjab today. Let's take a look at Hoshiarpur and Faridkot. Now, over to my colleague Tina Jha, who's standing by in our data center.
Well, Frank, in the Hoshiarpur seat of Punjab, the contest has usually been between the Congress and the BJP. If we look at the last few Lok Sabha elections, which is what makes it interesting, because in the all other seats, you see a direct contest between the Akali Dal and the Congress party. So here, the junior party in the NDA, the BJP, is in direct contest with the grand old party. Although if we look at the winning figures since 1962, the Congress party seems to have an upper hand in terms of more number of wins in Hoshiarpur Lok Sabha seat. Talking about the electoral history in this seat, in the year 2014, the seat was won by the BJP. Vijay Sampla won the seat for the Saffron party with 36% votes. A decade ago, in 2009, the seat went to Santosh Choudhary of the Congress party, who won with a vote share of 42.55%. In the year 2004, the seat was won by Avinash Rai Khanna of the BJP, and his vote share then was 44.20%. In the year 1999, when the NDA went to form the government at the centre, Hoshiarpur elected Congress candidate Charanjit Singh Channi as its MP, and his vote share was 44.15%. A year ago in 1998, the voters here had elected BJP's Kamal Choudhary, and at that time, his vote share was 51.47%. In 1996, the seat was won by Kashi Ram of the BSP with 39.50% votes. In the 1991 elections, Hoshiarpur went to Kamal Choudhary. However, back then, he had contested on a Congress ticket and his vote share was 33.87%. In 1989 as well, Kamal Choudhary won Hoshiarpur for the Congress party with 32% votes polled in his favour. In 1985, Kamal Choudhary registered his maiden win from Hoshiarpur. Contesting on a Congress ticket, he got 47.90% votes. In 1980, Zail Singh registered a win from here with 48% votes. In 1977, BLD's Balbir Singh won the seat with a handsome vote share of 61.95%. In 1971, Hoshiarpur went again in Congress's kitty. Darbara Singh won the seat with 53.91% votes. In 1967 as well, the seat was won by the Congress party, its candidate R. Kishan, although his vote share was only 29% back then. 5 years prior to that, party candidate Amarnath Vidya had won the seat with 41.79% votes. Now this time, there are 2 doctors and 2 bureaucrats in the fray in Hoshiarpur. The BJP has fielded former bureaucrat Som Prakash in place of Vijay Sampla, and his BSP rival Khushi Ram is also a retired IS officer. While Congress candidate Rajkumar Chabewal and Aam Aadmi Party candidate Ravjot Singh are both doctors by profession. Talking about another key seat that we are discussing today, the Faridkot parliamentary constituency in Punjab. This was formed prior to the 1977 elections. Now, this seat consists of 9 Vidhan Sabha segments, of which 2 are reserved for the scheduled caste. The Aam Aadmi Party's Sadhu Singh defeated Shiromani Akali Dal leader Paramjit Kaur Gulshan, the then sitting member of parliament from Faridkot, in the 2014 general elections. Akali Dal's Paramjit Kaur Gulshan had won back in 2009 with a vote share of just a little less than 50%. In the elections before that, in the year 2004, the seat was won again by Akali Dal's Sukhbir Singh Badal, who won a huge, massive vote share of 53.29%. In 1999, Jagmeet Singh Brar of the Congress party had broken Badal's winning streak, grabbing 48% of the vote share. The previous 2 elections, both 1998 and 1996, had gone in favour of Sukhbir Singh Badal. Congress's Jagmeet Singh Brar had been the winner in 1991 as well, winning 58.6% of the votes. Jagdev Singh of the Shiromani Akali Dal Maan faction won the election back in 1989 with a vote share of 48.63%. In the 1985 elections, the people of Faridkot elected Akali Dal's Shaminder Singh to Lok Sabha. Prior to that, in 1980, the seat went to the Congress party, while in 1977, it was won by the Shiromani Akali Dal. Now this time, Aam Aadmi Party's Sadhu Singh will be up against Gulzar Singh of the Shiromani Akali Dal and Mohammad Sadiq of the Congress party. So again, a triangular contest between the Congress, the Akali Dal and the Aam Aadmi Party here, Frank.
Right, Tina, thank you for taking us through those 2 seats there of Hoshiarpur and Faridkot as well. You know, Professor, if you look at Punjab on the whole, we'll get to these 2 seats once we are rejoined by our, local expert from the ground there. But if you look at Punjab on the whole, do you believe that it's going to be a 3-cornered contest, or it's going to be a direct fight between, of course, the Alliance, the NDA and the Congress in the state?
Like in 2014, it was a triangular contest when AAP emerged as a phenomenon and presented an alternative politics, and it had a good following in the subsequent 2-3 years. But as a phenomenon, it was not able to stabilize and establish its strong organizational groups, so that the weakening organizational strength and lack of leadership brought about infighting within AAP, and AAP, which emerged as an alternative. We used to say that there is a TINA, there was no alternative in Punjab politics. On the one hand, we had NDA, Shiromani Akali Dal and BJP and the Congress. So AAP presented an alternative to these 2 kinds of politics over there. But as a phenomenon, it was not able to strengthen its organization. Lack of leadership brought about the downfall of the AAP. So I would say the overall Punjab's 13 seats, we still see that there could be the fight between the NDA and Shiromani Akali Dal in most of the seats, except Sangrur, where we can still find Bhagwat Singh Maan may be able to retain that seat because of its on skills, on leadership, on following all his work and connect with the voters, local voters. But rest of the 12 seats would say that the three important seats, Gurdaspur, Hoshiarpur and even Amritsar, where you still have seats connected with the border, and there besides local issues, the national narrative, the security, the nationalism, the Pulwama and other issues are still dominating the minds of the people. Secondly, the urban voters, most of the urban constituencies still prefer that Modi ji's developmental work has brought about some substantial changes at the local level and at the rural level. So from that perspective, you can say that Shiromani Akali Dal, because BJP has nothing to lose from Punjab, because last time it had just managed 2 seats, Gurdaspur and Hoshiarpur, it lost the Amritsar seat. But this time it seems that BJP is still contesting against 3 seats and maybe managing all 3 seats. Challenge for BJP is that whether its ally, Shiromani Akali Dal, despite all this decimation from 2017, in fighting within SAD and the breakaway factions coming out of the SAD, whether SAD is going to bring about or retain some of the important seats, it can just move its ally more than 4. That would be a challenge for Shiromani Akali Dal and that's Alliance NDA over there.
Sure. I'll get a thought in from you as well, Mr. Tandon, on the Shiromani Akali Dal and and the future of the party really after this election. But before that, let me go across to Naresh Arora, who's joined us once again really to talk about the 2 seats of Hoshiarpur and Faridkot. Naresh Arora, take us through really these 2 seats of Hoshiarpur and Faridkot, and what is the discourse really in these 2 seats and what's making news there?
Hoshiarpur was won by the BJP. It was thin victory. The margin was very thin, around 13,000 votes, I guess. On the seat of the 15 lakh, 1.5 million votes, the 13,000 vote margin is a little margin. It can be breached any time. But this time, but Aam Aadmi Party was again a factor on the Hoshiarpur seat as well in the 2014 election. Though this time the candidate of the Aam Aadmi Party, Ravindra Singh, is also a good choice of the party, but the vote of the party is now not with the party. So it is a big problem for the Aam Aadmi Party all over Punjab except Sangrur, as Sir said. But the direct contest here will be in between the Akali Dal BJP candidate and the Congress candidate. But result of the same will depend on the seats of the Akali Dal, because there are only few seats which is being contested by the BJP in assembly election. Mr. Som Prakash is MLA from the Fagwada, and BJP contests that seat. Apart from this, Pathankot Road, this seat, there are few seats on the Pathankot Road that is called Hindi Belt, Tanda, Udmod seats jo hain Vidhan Sabha, that are being contested by the BJP only. The other seats are of the constituency are being contested by the Akali Dal, and the Congress has the edge in 2017 election on these seats.
Right.
BJP has only 1 seat out of 9 assembly seats in 2017, and that is the Fagwada only. So the fight, no doubt, is between the Congress and the BJP, and the contenders are also new. Som Prakash contested the election in 2009, I guess, and he lost the election.
Okay.
But his margin of the loss was very low. So this time also the contest is between the Congress and the BJP, and the X factor is with the Congress right now, because they already won the 8 seats of the 9 assembly seats falls in this Lok Sabha constituency.
A quick thought on Faridkot as well. Naresh Arora, before I let you go, a quick thought on Faridkot as well, and then I'll get a closing comment in from our panelists here because I'm running out of time. Okay, Mr. Ran, let me come across to you. Naresh Arora, thank you for joining us on the program and sharing your views there. As far as this election is concerned in Punjab, if we focus specifically on Punjab, there are of course several key seats that we have not discussed today but have discussed in the past. But, you know, where do you think the election is going to be won or lost?
See, as most of the experts have been saying, Aam Aadmi Party is no longer a very significant factor. How much vote they can cut either of the SAD, BJP or the Congress is very difficult to predict. But the fact remains they are there in the fray in all the constituencies. There are two factions. Similarly, there is a faction of the Akali Dal also. So on the face of it, if you look at it, it seems it's advantage Congress. But the fact that even Badals want Modi factor to be projected, nationalism's narrative to be highlighted, but on the other hand, Captain Ramnan Singh wants to make it an Amarinder versus Badal fight, and BJP and Akali trying to exploit the weaknesses of the government loan waiver and also farmer suicide, etc.
Right.
So it seems that it's a very close fight, and the only loser at the end of the day may be Aam Aadmi Party. From 4 seats, they may be reduced only to 1. But as your expert was also saying, Hoshiarpur, which was won by BJP last time,
right,
and Gurdaspur, which BJP lost in the by-election, and Amritsar, which they lost in the 2014 election. So stakes are very high for BJP.
Sure.
If they don't retain even 2 seats which they had won, so it will be a big challenge for BJP. Therefore, they have fielded Hardeep Puri from Amritsar and also Sunny Deol from Gurdaspur, changed their candidate in Hoshiarpur. So
right,
they have tried to do their best. But I think Modi factor may weigh in the border areas, and that is the only hope of the Akalis as well as the BJP.
All right. On that note then, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of Rajyanama. Thank you to the both of you for joining me on the program and sharing your views on those 6 seats and of course generally what's happening in Punjab on the whole. Let's not forget, last phase of polling will take place on the 19th of May, results on the 23rd. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Rajyanama. Thank you for watching. See you again next time.